Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that literally redefined human history. Think about it for a second. What if one single war completely changed the world forever? World War II wasn't just, lines moving on a map. It was this massive, earth-shattering event that reshaped global politics, fast-tracked technology, redrew borders, and permanently altered millions of lives. But how did it all actually kick off? That's exactly what we're going to unpack today. And that brings us to the big question, right? Why did the world fail to stop Adolf Hitler before it was just too late? How did things escalate into such an unbelievable global catastrophe? To figure out the real story, we've got to trace the dominoes back to the very first one that fell. We need to look at the exact environment that allowed this devastating conflict to just brew right under the world's nose. All right, let's dive right in. Part 1, the fallout of World War I and the aftermath of 1918. So to really understand the Second World War, we actually have to rewind a bit to 1918. Germany had just lost the First World War, and by 1919, they were forced to sign the Treaty of Versailles. Now, this document didn't just peacefully end the war. Well, actually, it was more like it sought to completely punish Germany. We're talking forced to accept full responsibility for the conflict, ordered to pay crippling reparations, stripped of their territories, and basically forced to decimate their military. These were unbelievably harsh conditions, and frankly, they acted as the ultimate catalyst for everything that was about to happen. So, what does this all mean for the people living there? Well, the resulting devastation was absolute. The German economy just completely collapsed under the weight of this treaty. Inflation went absolutely out of control, unemployment skyrocketed, and you had millions of everyday citizens struggling just to survive. But maybe the most dangerous fallout was psychological. There was this deep-seated belief spreading like wildfire among the German people that their country had been unfairly humiliated on the world stage. And this crushing ruin, combined with that growing anger, it created the absolute perfect breeding ground for a powerful, opportunistic leader to step in from the ashes. Which brings us to part 2, Hitler's rise to power in the 1920s. It was exactly in this chaotic, desperate arena that a former soldier named Adolf Hitler stepped into the spotlight. He joined the Nazi Party in the early 1920s, and he knew exactly what a hopeless public wanted and needed to hear. He was out there promising to restore Germany's lost pride, create jobs, rebuild that weakened military, and most importantly for them, rip up that humiliating Treaty of Versailles. And you know what? These promises worked. By 1933, he successfully goes from being this promising orator to actually becoming the Chancellor of Germany. But becoming Chancellor was really just step 1. Almost immediately, Hitler systematically dismantled the government to forge a full-blown dictatorship. He wiped out political opponents, seized total control of the media, and started rapidly expanding the military, completely ignoring those international agreements. And crucially, he anchored this entire movement in a deeply dangerous racist ideology, claiming that Germans belonged to a superior race. It's this specific, toxic ideological foundation that would eventually pave the way for the unimaginable crimes of the ensuing war. Let's move on to part 3, expanding the German Empire and outward aggression. Okay, so rebuilding internally just wasn't enough. Hitler quickly turns his attention outward, driven by a really core concept of his ideology, Lebensraum. Basically, this translates to living space. Hitler firmly believed that for Germany to thrive, it inherently needed more land to expand into. So this wasn't just standard political maneuvering. It was a strict ideological demand for territory that completely drove his increasingly aggressive foreign policy. Let's look at how this builds year by year, because it really is like watching dominoes fall. In 1936, the first big one tips over. German troops march right into the Rhineland. Now remember, military forces were strictly forbidden there by the old treaty. Then, 1938 rolls around, and Germany annexes Austria. Later that exact same year, Hitler demands the Sudetenland, a German-speaking region inside Czechoslovakia. And by March 1939, Germany just moves in and occupies the rest of Czechoslovakia. It was this terrifying, totally unchecked march across the map. A really crucial piece of this whole expansion phase was the Anschluss. That's the specific historical term for Germany's annexation of Austria back in 1938. This was a massive land grab, and it was a huge flashing signal to the rest of the world that Germany was absolutely no longer playing by the rules. Now, you might be wondering, what on earth were the other major powers doing while all this was happening? Well, European leaders were desperately trying to avoid another world war. Cue the Munich Agreement, where Britain and France actually agreed to just let Hitler take the Sudetenland, basically thinking, okay, if we give him this, it'll finally satisfy his ambitions. But the reality? Completely the opposite. While Britain and France thought they were securing peace, Hitler looked at this appeasement and just saw glaring weakness. Giving in didn't pacify him. It literally only fueled his drive to take even more. Which brings us to a massive turning point in Part 4, the secret Soviet alliance of August 1939. By 1939, Britain and France finally woke up to the fact that Hitler wasn't going to stop, so they officially promised to defend Poland if Germany attacked. But then, we get a political curveball of sheer audacity, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Germany completely shocked the globe by signing a non-aggression agreement with the Soviet Union. These guys were fierce ideological enemies, yet they secretly agreed not to attack each other. And worse, they secretly planned to carve up Poland right down the middle between the two of them. With this pact inked, the stage was officially set for disaster. And that leads us to the climax, Part 5, the dawn of Blitzkrieg on September 1, 1939. All the political maneuvering abruptly ended on September 1, 1939, and the explosion of global conflict began. When Germany invaded Poland, they didn't just march in soldiers, they unleashed an entirely new, terrifying military strategy called Blitzkrieg, which translates to lightning war. This strategy was all about combining fast-moving tanks, coordinated aircraft strikes, and rapid infantry pushes to just completely overwhelm enemy defenses in a matter of weeks. It was an approach built on sheer terror and unprecedented speed. And this brilliantly illustrates why the contrast on the battlefield was just devastating. Many European armies were still mentally and strategically stuck in the past, anchored in the slow-moving defensive trench warfare of World War I. On the flip side, Germany is unleashing these incredibly fast, highly coordinated, shocking blitzkrieg attacks. The rest of the world, they simply weren't ready for warfare to move at this kind of lightning pace. Now, these early victories weren't just because Germany had a massive army. They had some extreme technological and strategic advantages in their back pocket. We're talking modern tanks, highly trained pilots absolutely dominating the skies, and advanced communication systems to coordinate these complex, real-time attacks, all backed by meticulously planned strategies. This unbelievable synergy is exactly what allowed them to capture territory at speeds that caught the rest of Europe completely off-balance. Just look at the timeline of Poland's fall. It is tragic and astonishingly fast. September 1st, Germany invades. September 3rd, Britain and France officially declare war on Germany, and bam, World War II formally begins. Just weeks after that, acting right on their secret pact, the Soviet Union invades eastern Poland. Crushed from both sides, Poland is completely defeated and divided within a single month. The deadliest war in human history was now fully, undeniably underway. But the terrifying reality is that Poland was only the very beginning. With a whole country falling in just 1 month, what happens when the rest of Europe faces the lightning war? Next time, we're going to see Hitler launch attacks that literally stunned the globe, leading to the incredibly rapid falls of Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, and eventually France. How does Britain end up standing totally alone against Nazi Germany? We'll dive into the fall of France, the Battle of Britain, and the eventual invasion of the Soviet Union in our next explainer. Until then, keep exploring, and thanks so much for joining me today.